If you're not measuring, you're guessing, which is fine if you are where you want to be. If you're not where you want to be, you need to start measuring or be okay with not being where you want to be. But you can't have both. If our environment doesn't call for strength and resilience, we become weak in all ways. Sad but true. I have a body. I realize that the choices that I'm making are having an influence on how I think, feel, operate, work through the day. And if I can have an influence on that, then I'm going to try and have an influence on that. If you just say, oh, you can just do whatever you want, then you can't take action if you don't have a plan. And if your plan is do whatever you want, that's not a plan, right? You got to get these things lined up so you can optimize what you're doing with the time that you have here. And we're going. I was going to say we're live, but we're not. I mean, I'm live, but you're not. I mean, you are because you're listening. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to say. Episode 21, curveball here. If you remember last week, I said I would be doing an interview, which I'm super pumped about, but the scheduling didn't work out. I was waiting for a microphone that didn't show up till today. And so we scheduled it for next week. But now she's got scheduling issues. So we're not going to be able to do it next week. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to talk about next week. I have no idea. But hopefully something good. Or maybe I'll just turn on the camera and mic and ramble. Just roll, complain about stuff. Get on a soapbox. We're not going to do that. Maybe. Episode 21, article. I'm pretty stoked. If you remember way back in the beginning, I said that I had these 5 topics that I wanted to cover and I would write about them. And then eventually I would do a podcast, or I would cover the article on a podcast, and it'd be great, which was good. It's a good plan. It's just not exactly how things went. I kind of got distracted. I shouldn't say distracted. Just it was way more overwhelming doing this whole thing than I expected. And it was I had to get myself more organized, and then realizing like these are massive topics that I'm trying to cover here, and it just wasn't going to work out, So I pivoted and I covered a more specific topic, and it took 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. I don't remember exactly how long, but it did take some time. But we got it. I got it down, and I'm stoked about it. So again, this week, what I'm going to be doing for y'all is I'm going to be reading again. So similar to last week, if you listened to last week's podcast about the development of the unconscious mind, which is big time, baby. This won't be this ain't going to be anything like that, other than the fact that I'm going to be reading. And I also forgot that I needed to put like the notes together to get things started. So I just did that last minute, and I did it on one sheet instead of like 4. So here we go. Let's get into this. Episode 21, article, the exercise and diet debate is over. And it is. And you're going to understand why by the time we get through this thing. Yeah, so it's going to be good. Goal of this episode is to share the article. I'm thinking like, hey, I can just read this thing. And for those people who don't like to read, I'll just read it to you. Like an audio book, Fantastic idea, right? Right. Let me get a drink of water here. So that is the plan and the goal. I didn't update some of this stuff. Try to simplify its contents. The contents are already simplified. We will not have to do that. This is a copy and paste from last week's little whatnots. Bear with me here. And we will have some fun, per usual. Outline of topics. I did update this. Updates. We're going to go through the updates we have before we get started. So I'll just cover 2 things before we get started, which I probably already said. Then we're just going to read the article. I'm going to read it verbatim and make my comments as we go along. And then if I have any, I'll have some final thoughts. So let's put this aside for now. Are we recording? Uh-oh, I got a half battery over here. Half battery, we're going to make it. Oh, wait, I can't put this down yet. All right, here we go. Updates. Well, I got golf on here because I don't know about you, but when football season's over, I'm so used to the Sunday routine that I end up going home about the same time. So I got a pretty basic routine. I wake up, I cook some breakfast on Sunday. I cook some breakfast. I read for about an hour, and then I scoot off to church. And then after church, I go to a coffee shop and I read for a couple more hours. And it usually lands me at home, 2-ish, 3-ish, something like that. And there ain't no football on anymore. So, but golf is on. And I don't play golf, but once a year, I enjoy watching it for some reason. Who knows? So I doubt I'll be giving golf updates, but maybe I will, if you're a golf guy or girl. Weather is very cold. It is very cold right now, which I don't mind. I think it's kind of fun to like not let it bother you. Just try and toughen up your mentalness a little bit. Mental toughness. Subscriber update. What do we got on here? We got email 61. That is the same. If you're on the social medias today, I'm going to be posting these articles to Substack. If you're not familiar with that, I'm not very familiar with it. I would describe it as social media for writers. I guess that's how I think about it. I want to get the articles that I write also up on the website, obviously, but I'm going to be posting them to Substack. I think it's a good idea. It seems like a good thing. It's catching some speed, and you're allowed to say what you want on there, so that is good. So subscribers are 61. That's the same. YouTube did move, went to 85 to 87. Basically, we haven't done anything. We've got the new YouTube channel manager in place, and him and I are still trying to get our groove down on what's going on. Nathan, the editor, he's a little bit late. Nathan, it's not funny. No, just kidding. It's funny. I don't mind. I realize it doesn't have to go out exactly on Monday every time. Like people aren't really paying attention like that, and they get notifications. So a little bit late. He's doing his thing and building the house. So he got it to me today. So I'm going to get that episode up today. So I'm going to be pretty busy after I get done with this. And so why was I saying that, Dennis? YouTube. Man, that was a rabbit trail. YouTube went to 87 because I'm still trying to get settled in with this new guy and all this other stuff. Anyways, so we did get to, though, just from what we've already posted. Spotify went to 22. So we got a live one there. And Apple stayed the same. We prefer a live audience, or at least an audience that is live. Reminder, please submit your questions to Dennis at DennisFenrich.com. You can probably post on Substack now as well. Before we get started, here we go. I already said this. I had mentioned last week, which you haven't heard this episode yet. It's always messes me up in my head. Like I'm recording one, but I just posted last week's yesterday, typically today. Anyways, I already told you that. So we were postponing this interview with Taylor, which I'm super excited about. She's type 1 diabetic. Happened a little bit later in her life, teens. And we're going to dig into that story. Talk about, her background before that. Talk about kind of day of stuff, how they kind of found out, what were the symptoms and all that. And then talk about her life after and how she manages, doing high intensity training or doing CrossFit or strength training or whatever she's doing with all the systems she has, because she's using it all. She's got the CGM going and all that other thing, all the other stuff. So I'm pretty excited to talk about that. So that will be in the next couple weeks for sure. And also, and I already said this as well, this article I'm going to cover was not one of the original topics. What were the original topics? The facts. Then there was, not in order, nutrition, and we're going to go into exercise. We're just going to break all those down, but it's just, they're too big. And it's just going to be, it could be 4 or 5 months before I'd have one ready, to be honest, because I don't want to say anything that I don't truly, I'm not going to say anything off the cuff. I want it to be accurate. And so it takes time to say exactly what you are thinking. And that's why I like writing, because it does that. All right, let's get into this. Time to hit that article. Time to put the glasses on. If you're not watching, you're listening, the glasses are on. It means things just got serious. All right, so like I said, I'm just going to read, and then if I feel like it, I'll comment. If not, I won't. The exercise and diet debate is over. You hear it all the time when it comes to fitness. Just do what feels good to you. Oh, no. This is not the updated version. My God. Oh, my God. You guys are going to get the slightly unedited version. I made some final edits as I was loading it in there, and these are not on here. Anyways, we're going to start over, not let that distract us. All right, the exercise and nutrition debate. See, even the title is wrong. All right, you hear it all the time when it comes to fitness. Just do what feels good to you and express yourself. That got worded a lot better. This thinking is even the message of Planet Fitness, the Purple Gym brand that encourages all types of people to work out in their own way, as the ad says. And that is exactly what their ad does say. I looked it up. I wanted to quote that. Work out in their own way. Well, that's not a good plan. And the reason, I think I said this before, but that is not a good plan, because people need direction, right? If you just say, oh, you can just do whatever you want, then you can't take action if you don't have a plan. And if your plan is do whatever you want, that's not a plan, right? So this is really not helping anybody. It doesn't help anybody to tell them it doesn't matter what you do, just go do something, because then they'd have no idea where to start and no idea what to do. So people are looking for direction. Okay, back to the article. For nutrition, it's no different. There are hundreds of diets. Each one says they are the answer, with a doctor and scientist to back it up, creating the same situation. An unlimited amount of options. Just choose the one that is right for you, although they all say they are right. But is this true? Do we all need our own exercise and diet program because we are all unique? Let's look at some examples of things that don't need to be unique when it comes to our bodies. Sleep comes to mind. We all need about 7 to 8 hours. Water intake has a consistent recommendation of about half your weight in ounces. Sitting for long periods seems to be bad for everyone. The FDA established nutritional RDAs years ago. Whether you agree with the exact numbers or not isn't the point. It's that we collectively decided that there were minimum quantities of nutrients needed to maintain at least a minimum of health. In parentheses, we will use this to make our point on diet a bit later. So we kind of go back to that and use it as a point. Strong point, by the way. What about bad things? Do they affect everybody's body in a similar manner? Smoking, yes. Toxic chemicals like arsenic, yes. The fact that we have identified a group of compounds that we call toxic indicates that our biology reacts to at least these things in a similar manner. What about drugs? Don't we expect drugs and medications like aspirin, ibuprofen, Tylenol, cannabis, SSRIs, and antibiotics to affect us all in a similar manner? Yes, we do. Otherwise, they would not be mass-produced and utilized. We don't all expect pharmaceutical companies to develop a unique drug for each and every one of us. If you take Tylenol and I take Tylenol, it will affect our physiology similarly because our physiology is very similar. In addition to the ones mentioned above, there are two more reasons why this debate is over. And these are like the big points. We all have DNA, and we all want the same thing from our bodies. Since the second point will need more explanation, let's start with it. So a little bit choppy there, but so DNA, we all have DNA, which I'll dig into a little bit, and we all don't ultimately want the exact same thing for our bodies, but the majority of the population, we do, and we'll get into that. And so I actually cover that first. All right. Before we do that, I want to acknowledge that we do. Oh yeah, this is good. I make some little points along the way. Before we do that, I want to acknowledge that we do have our differences. It's just that they lie more in our psychology than our biology. Psychologically, how we view and think about the world and the people in it has a fair amount of variance, as evidenced by the diversity of cultures, beliefs, and ways of living. So I have no argument there. We, for this discussion, are talking about the biological aspect of who we are and what is needed to take care of that biology. How, hopefully, we can begin to agree more on the psychological aspect as we make our way into the future. Okay, so that was the opening paragraph, basically stating the case. Hey, right now the message is, hey, just do what you want. Just go do something. It's going to be great. I don't think that's helping anybody, but some people think it makes them feel good. And then, I make some points about, well, we don't think that way in any other area of our body, right? Like Tylenol, drugs, examples that I used. So right off the bat, that just doesn't make any sense. We expect our physiology to react similarly in this regard, but then we say this thing that doesn't make any sense when it comes to exercise and nutrition, that it should react in it, that we all need our own unique thing, and there's going to be a different reaction or something like that. So it's illogical, right? So that's kind of the opening paragraph, kind of states what's going on, or not the opening. I don't know what that would be called. What is that called? I'm new to writing, so it's not a paragraph because there's like 9 of them. Opening statement, I guess. All right, back to the article. And this section is called Our Goal for Our Bodies is the Same, which I just mentioned I'm going to cover. It's important to establish that the majority of people want the same thing for their bodies. If that were not the case, there couldn't be an ideal approach to exercise and nutrition, which is the point this article is trying to make. So let's clarify what that same thing is. In a nutshell, we want our bodies to function well for as long as possible. That sounds about right. It does, doesn't it? But let's dig into what functioning well means to ensure we agree on that, as it seems a bit vague. And this is what I've come to realize over the years of working with people. You know, a long, long time ago, when I first got into training and working with people, coaching people one-on-one, or in any regard, coaching people in fitness, was that when I would sit down and do a consultation, the majority of people were like, I want to lose weight. That was the goal back in 2002 when I would sit down and talk with most people. There would be 5 out of 100 would say, I want to get jacked or put on muscle, and that was the 20-year-old dude. Everybody else, and I mean everybody else, had the exact same goal. Everybody had the same goal. They wanted to lose weight. And that goal was because people were gaining weight, and nobody really knew why. It's most likely to change in the food environment, but right about, was it mid-'80s, early 90s, people just started gaining weight. The obesity epidemic had begun, and people were looking for a solution. And the simple answer that was given was, hey, you need to burn more calories. Exercise burns calories, and so exercise is a tool for weight loss. And I've said this multiple times. It's not a good way to look at it. It's a very bad way to look at it. Exercise is for improving the function of your body, not for weight loss. And if you want to get into weight loss, you need to start looking at your diet. But I'm on a ramp. I'm on a soapbox right now. So what was I saying? All that. Oh yeah. So we do, and then later on. Well, now I'm hearing about 5, 6, 7 years ago. People, they really didn't know. They couldn't really say it. But most people weren't coming in just with the straight up number one goal was weight loss. They were coming in with like, I want to feel better. I want to look better. I want my body to kind of work better. I feel tired. I'm kind of getting sick. And basically what people are saying now is, I want to learn how to take care of myself. I have a body. I realize that the choices that I'm making are having an influence on how I think, feel, operate, work through the day. And if I can have an influence on that, then I'm going to try and have an influence on that. And so that's what we're hearing now. People want to learn how to take care of their body. They want their body to function really well for a really long time. And since that is the case, since you know what you want, then what you need to do it lays itself out once you establish the end goal. Okay, once you establish the end goal, you kind of lose the option of just doing anything you want because you're going to get you anywhere, right? So that's what the article gets into with exercise and nutrition. Back to the article. But let's dig into what functioning well means to ensure we agree on that, as it seems a bit vague. So that's what we're about to do. For a body to function well, it will need to be strong, produce plenty of energy, and move without restriction. This essentially is the opposite of what happens to our bodies as we age. As we age, we will become weaker, have less energy, and our movement will become more and more restricted, potentially painful. Any loss in these 3 capacities would create a substantial loss in function. If we are weak, we can't do anything. If we don't have any energy, we won't want to do anything. And if our joints don't work or hurt all the time, we end up with both situations. If your joints hurt or don't work all the time, is that what I said? Joints and don't, that's a weird way to say it, don't or hurt all the time. So if your joints don't work and they hurt, you're not going to want to do anything and you're not going to feel like doing anything. That is for sure. Back to the article. Based on that upsetting set of facts, our purpose for an exercise program becomes clear. Maintaining or improving these 3 capacities. The need to create these specific outcomes limits the amount of options we have when it comes to choosing what we are going to do for a workout that day. We can't just do whatever we want because it feels good if we want our body to function well and feel good. We need to exercise in a way that improves our strength, conditioning, and mobility to ensure this happens. I like doing that. I don't know why. You know, as a kid, I thought I was going to be a rapper. I'm being fully transparent. And I like to make the words kind of, you know, it's got some artistic nature to it, I guess. I enjoy that. Makes me laugh. And makes you applaud. Or I just hit a button on a machine. What a rim shot. All right. Sorry. Oh, Lordy. This does keep getting more and more fun, by the way. All right, back to the article. Now, there are exceptions to this. Some people want their body to look super jacked. That means muscular. And some people want it to win in their sport, like weightlifting, marathons, football, hockey, etc. Maybe even taking their sport to the professional level and making a living at it. But for the rest of us, ensuring our bodies function well for as long as possible is the most important thing. And I put this in parentheses here. And I would argue that this is the case for the people just mentioned as well, which might not be obvious to them until after it's time to hang up those shoes, spikes, and skates. And, you know, I get it, right? If you're a pro football player, baseball player, pro anything, and if you're getting paid whatever, if you can make a living off what you do physically with your body, I mean, that's fantastic. And I think pretty much everybody, most people are going to take advantage of that. There's going to be repercussions though, right? You train you play a professional sport, you play football, they all know they're sacrificing function later, right? The body is going to take a beating. I mean, it's worth it. From my perspective, I say it's worth it, and I'm sure most of them would as well. But I'm sure there'll be days when they wish they had some of that function back. All right, back to the article. Where was I? Now, some will respond and say something to the effect of, there is more than one way to skin a cat, or that there are many roads leading to Rome. This thinking does apply to quite a few things, just not our biology. We are constrained by the physics of this world and how our biology adapts to it. This brings us back to our first point from earlier. We all have DNA, and DNA dictates that in order to obtain the specific adaptations we are looking for, we will need to do some specific things, as we have stated. Fantastic. All right, so that was that section. And, you know, it just kind of established the fact that we do have a similar goal. You know, for the most part, we all have a similar goal, and it's to make sure our bodies work really, really well for a long time. And so once you have that, that automatically lays out what it is you need to do to make that happen, because you can't just do that willy-nilly. And you're going to need to establish those three things. You're going to have to maintain your strength, because you're going to get weak as you age. You're going to have to maintain your conditioning, which is really your capacity to produce energy, because you're going to lose that as you age. And you're going to need to maintain your mobility. Did I skip that part? You need to maintain your mobility, because that's, we're going to stiffer as time goes by. So our training program needs to make sure it's taking care of those three things. Otherwise, we're going to have a giant hole in one of our capacities, and aging is not going to be as great. Let me try to miss that paragraph. Hold on a second. Let me look here. Choppy chop. All right, back to the article. This section is called We Are the Same. We all have bones, muscles, a heart, liver, kidneys, skin, eyeballs, etc. These lovely and wondrous things are made up of the same thing, cells. These cells are made up of amino acids, among other things, which are constructed according to instructions from our DNA. See, did you like that? Which are constructed according to instructions. See, I think that's clever. Back to the article. DNA is a protein coding machine. It interacts with our environment through epigenetics, which changes how our DNA is expressed and, therefore, how the proteins our body is made out of are constructed. When the environment calls for strength, we build stronger tissues. When the environment calls for more energy production, we build cells that can produce energy longer, faster, or both, depending on how we exercise. When the environment calls for movement, our tissues improve their capacity to move. Our environment is communicating, signaling to our DNA how our body needs to adapt. No signal, no adaptation. No adaptation, no fitness. We are linked to our environment. We are part of it and a reflection of it. If our environment doesn't call for strength and resilience, we become weak in all ways. Sad but true. But this does not need to be sad news. It can be great news because we can control our environment. With our exercise and nutrition program, we can build an environment that creates the right signals, therefore the right adaptations, and eventually the body we want. One that functions well for a long time, at least within the limits of our genetic capacity. Sticking with the article, let's point out one more thing. All organisms share DNA to some degree. Hold on. All right, so this is before I get to the clowning, which is the rest of this is clowning for the most part. So that's the main point, right? So there's this thing called epigenetics. And what that basically is how your DNA is being the part, you have, DNA is the same in every cell you have. What changes is what parts of that DNA are being expressed. And so if it's an eye, it's got certain parts of that DNA are exposed and they're coding for proteins that are going to make your eye. If it's a bone cell, if it's a blood cell, it doesn't matter. Any kind of cell, this is what's going on with the DNA. All the DNA is the same, different parts are being expressed. And you can get changes in the expression depending on the environment, right? The DNA through signal into your body is getting communicated to with whatever the heck's down near that DNA, and it's changing what's exposed and what's being expressed. And so this is how we get adaptation, all right? Okay. Back to the article. Let's point out one more thing. Sorry. All organisms share DNA to some degree. We share 60% with trees, 80% with cows, 82% with dogs, 90% with cats, and 98% with chimpanzees. Although there is a large amount that is shared, there's still a fair amount of variance, except for the chimpanzee, of course. But from human to human, there isn't much variance at all. It is 99.9% the same. So, not only is DNA doing the same thing in us, adapting to our environment, but it is virtually the same in all of us. This points to the fact, once again, of how much we are biologically alike, like 99.9% alike. A quick question before we move on. Since we share more DNA with cats than dogs, does that make cats better pets? That's why I started laughing. Just having some fun, of course. Don't shoot the messenger. Now, seriously, I'm not a huge animal fan, to be honest. I have a cat because, well, it's just the way it worked out, okay? But, I love cat. Cat's great. If you love dogs, great, love dogs. I'm just having some fun with that. I don't want anybody to get upset at me. I mean, get upset at me if you want. I think that's silly. Obviously, I'm making a joke. Okay, so that was that section, and I covered what the main point was about the epigenetics and the fact that our DNA is 99.9% alike. Like, so if you looked at it, that's what's going on. It's pretty fascinating to think that we share 60% of our DNA with trees, some trees. And how does that, why is it that way? Because there's commonalities that need to be there, right? There's some sort of some fundamental biological stuff that's going on. It's easier to explain that through like a dog, which is 82%, right? I think dogs are mammals. They have a serotonin system. They get a dopaminergic system. There's these same biological things that are going on. It's the other 18% that make us human, that make our bones shape the way they shape. And, our eyes do what our eyes do compared to what a dog does, and our nose and all those other things. But it's pretty wild that 60% with a tree, pretty amazing stuff. All right, back to the article. Dogs and cats are both great. Back to the article. Diet isn't much different. That's the new section here. Diet isn't much different. Okay, by this point, you might be thinking, all right, I get that an exercise program, since most of us have a similar goal of ensuring that our bodies work well for a long time, would need to be roughly the same to create that outcome. But not diet. Our dietary needs definitely differ. But do they? But did you die? But do they? It just says, but do they? With 2 question marks. Back to the article. In order to get diet to the same understanding as exercise, we will need to cover some nutrition fundamentals. So you guys have heard this before if you've been following the podcast, but I will read this. Nutrition's main function is to supply our body with the energy it needs to keep us alive. If you eat 0 calories for too long, you won't be here. Therefore, there is a minimum, and that is italicized, you need to take in to sustain your life, probably around 800 to 1,000 calories for most people. Anything under that, and your body will eventually shut down. Now, this minimum number will keep you alive, but you sure won't be living. In other words, we won't be running marathons anytime soon. In other words, you won't be running marathons anytime soon, because I definitely won't be. You will not have the energy. Duh. What we really need to find is the optimum, italicized, amount of calories to not only sustain life, but to ensure we are able to do all the things we want to do. And I made that point plenty of times before, right? It's an obvious thing to say, if you stop eating, you're going to die. Okay, that's obvious. That's not the point. The point is it helps you start to conceptualize the fact that there is a minimum you need to take in to sustain your life, and it's not going to be supplying you with a lot of energy. The goal with your nutrition program and how much energy you're taking, and specifically, is to make sure you're getting in enough energy so you're not tired all the time. You might not want to go to the gym because you're not taking in enough nutrition. It might not be just because you're lazy, which is the message that is out there now, right? A lot of, and whatever. I'm all about getting different messages out there. So, but the reality of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that it could be an energy thing, that you're not getting enough protein, enough total calories, whatever, enough sleep, whatever. It doesn't, don't just start call yourself a name because you didn't go to the gym that day when you knew you should have, right? Get out of the I don't feel like it mindset too. Like if you hear yourself saying, I don't feel like it a lot, you need to stop doing that. I would start rewiring that thing real quick. But it could be an energy thing. I've talked about this before, right? All right, too many rabbit trails. Okay, back to the article. How are we doing on time here? Yeah, back to the article. Okay, so last sentence was, what we really need to do is find the optimal amount of calories to not only sustain life, but to ensure we are able to. So again, finding that kind of the optimal amount. Second, all nutrients work like this, not just calories. They all have a minimum and optimum amount. The big ones are macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbohydrates, followed by micronutrients, minerals, and vitamins. It's critical that we get the right amounts of nutrients in, not too much and not too little, to ensure our bodies function as best they can. If we don't get enough vitamin C, you get scurvy. If you don't get enough iron, you become anemic. Don't eat any fat for long enough, and I Google AI'd this, I just said that, and you get dry skin, poor wound healing, vision problems, cognitive impairment, and eventual death. The key to nutrition is finding the right balance, and I don't mean in a way that sounds nice. No. I mean the actual amounts, the quantities. There's something I wanted to say. Oh, you always hear mineral or vitamins and minerals. It's always in that order, but actually the minerals are coming in larger quantities than the vitamins. So I put proteins, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, and then vitamins, and that is the typical order of from largest to smallest. I guess you would be taking in more grams of carbohydrate than protein. So maybe that's not exactly right. But the minerals, you do take in larger amounts of minerals than you do vitamins, and that's why I say that first. Okay, main point. Good nutrition is going to have to involve quantities to some degree. If you're not measuring, you're guessing, which is fine if you are where you want to be. If you're not where you want to be, you need to start measuring or be okay with not being where you want to be. But you can't have both. All right, back to the article. Now, there are only two reasons nutrients vary from person to person: body weight and activity level. Other than that, on the whole, we have the same nutritional requirements. This is because at a cellular level, cells need what cells need to function. It's that DNA thing again, that's in parentheses. There is an optimal amount of energy and nutrients that keep them humming along. If we come up short on any specific nutrient, things start going wrong, like scurvy, anemia, cognitive impairment, death, etc. When we keep the nutrients in the right balance, the right quantities, our cells, organs, and body are able to do what they need to do, and everything runs as it should. What do most diets do, though? We're getting to our point here. Do they talk about specific nutrients and the quantities needed? No. They label foods good and bad, good or bad. Eat carnivore because plants are bad. Eat vegan because animals are bad, in parentheses, to eat. Eat paleo, like our Paleolithic ancestors, because processed foods are bad. This is all an attempt to address what? Food quality or the nutrient content of food. But it's just that, an attempt. Good or bad labels are way too general to vet out nutrition content and therefore quality effectively. And even if they did a good job of getting us the nutrients we needed, they still don't speak to the quantities at all. They never mention quantity in any meaningful way, which, as we just talked about, is critical. Therefore, a diet that focuses on categorizing food as good or bad is mildly helpful at best for quality and completely misses the mark when it comes to quantities. We need a better approach to our nutrition if we're going to ensure our nutritional requirements are being met or optimized. That's why the diet debate is over, man. It has nothing to do. You're just not going to get there by having a blanket view of what food is, if it's good or bad, right? Carnivore, vegan, I don't care. You can be carnivore and you can be vegan. Just make sure you're meeting your nutritional requirements so your cells and organs and body can function optimally. That's what matters, right? Right. All right, back to the article. That's pretty much the climax right there. There is a better way, and it's been around a long time, a macros-based approach. It does the best job of addressing both quality and quantity that I know of. There is a ton of information on how to eat like this with a simple internet search. We will cover it at some point, but since it's the same if you hear it from us or from someone else, it may be a bit before we do. I don't plan on writing about it, but I might do a video or something. But this is obviously talking to people on the Substack. I don't know. I'm not going to write about it. Anyways, who knows? All right. Ultimately, diet comes down to getting the nutrients we all need in the appropriate quantities based on individual weight and activity level, not a general diet that categorizes foods as good or bad. Therefore, the diet debate is over. The sooner we realize this, the sooner we can start living the productive and healthy lives we are after. One more thing before we move off of diet and start to wrap up this article. There are two important considerations that I know of for people when it comes to diet. Food sensitivities, and if someone has a moral position on what they eat as a vegan or vegetarian would. Great. In those situations, do your best to prioritize your nutrient and quality needs to ensure optimal function first, then take your personal considerations into account. Doing it the other way around may result in a deficiency in one or the other or both, which is not good for anybody. Prioritize your health. Make sure you're getting the right amounts in. You could build that. You could say, I'm going to be vegan or I'm going to be carnivore, and then I'm going to build from there. That's fine. You're just going to have to supplement it something. You're going to have to supplement something. I'm getting it. I don't know them offhand, but each one of those is going to be missing something. If you're going to limit your food, the variety of your food that much, there's going to be missing nutrients that you're going to have to supplement. If that's what you want to do it. Have at it. But just know that that's what needs to happen for you to optimize your health. Because if you're subpar, that's not helping anybody. What we need is very productive, happy, helpful humans. That's what we need. And in order to be that way, you got to get your nutrition and exercise lined up. You got to get your sleep lined up. You got to get your water intake lined up. You got to get these things lined up so you can optimize what you're doing with the time that you have here. All right. I don't even know if I want to cover this. Why not? So we'll go through the whole article. So it starts wrapping up here. And I'll fly through this. Individual experience and genetic variation. This is the next section here. And so those are all two things that do need to be considered. I'll just read this real quick. Up until now, we have discussed how we are the same and need the same things to keep our bodies functioning well for as long as possible. Now, let's briefly discuss a couple of ways we are different. Individual experience and genetic variation. Just to be clear, this should be considered after the fundamentals of exercise and nutrition discussed above have been put in place. They will have the greatest impact by far and will get most everyone squared away and on track. After you've done that, then it may be helpful to consider the two topics below. That's the main point. There's going to be individual experience and genetic variation. It's going to be a thing for some people. You still need to lift weights and do conditioning work and do your mobility work and get in enough nutrients to support those behaviors. That's going to be 95% of what's going on with you. And then, hey, my individual experience and genetic variation. So let's talk about those super quick. Individual experience speaks to what happened to someone or their environment, or the environment that they grew up in and how it affected or set up their biology. Generally speaking, the more stressful your environment as a kid, the more wired you are for stress as an adult. Essentially, you maintain a higher stress state throughout your day and life overall. The major variance here seems to be how this influences the overall rate of metabolism or how it works on a daily basis. Does it mean a consistently higher level of stress, tension, or load, however you want to think about it? This would potentially create a higher need for specific micronutrients that are taxed at higher stress levels. So, I'll finish in a comment. No one, as far as I know, has shown that growing up in a high-stress environment changes metabolism. I mean, it's running different. It's either just going to run a little bit hotter or a little bit lower. And that's the case for anybody regardless. Some people's metabolisms just run faster. Some run slower. If you did grow up in a high-stress environment, yours is probably running a little bit hotter. You're wired for a little bit more stress. But it seems pretty clear that it can create an overall higher level of alertness that is maintained over the course of someone's life. Generally, what this means is you're just going to have to take in a little bit more nutrition. That's really what that means, right? Metabolism's not changed. You're not like doing something it's not doing something radically different. It's just going to run a little hotter. Therefore, you're probably going to need to take in a little bit more of whatever. Tweak around with it and figure it out. Salt, probably, because your adrenal glands use salt. Just a guess. If this is you, work on finding the right balance of exercise and downtime. This is something we all need to do, but if you carry more stress than others, you might want to tilt more toward the downtime part. Things like yoga, breath work, and connecting with others are all part of that. Play around and see what works best for you. So if this is you address your nutrition by figuring that out, but also you might need to do a little bit more of chilling than training, right? Just to make sure you're getting a better modulation of your stress response. Because if you're already a little bit more stressed, you're going to be adding on more stress with more exercise. So everybody's own body, you need to figure out what works for you, but you just might want to be doing a little bit more breath work than the average bear. Okay, in closing, that's a wrap. In the end, we are the same, have the same goals for our bodies, and therefore need essentially the same exercise and nutrition approach. Let's start talking about how to exercise and eat in a way that effectively supports all the things we want to do: creating fitness, health, and longevity, being productive at work, spending time with friends and family, or running a marathon if one were inclined to do so. I hope this has brought you some clarity, raised some questions, or inspired you to think deeply about this topic. If you have comments, questions, or points, please leave them below. Thanks for reading. All right. Well, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. I don't know what the next article is going to be. I'm going to pull something out and start working on it. But yeah, man, if you enjoyed that, let me know. And man, I hope I started recording. I recorded. Oh, wait. Where's my some final thoughts for you guys. Hopefully you're applying what you're learning. Hopefully this is helping you. Next podcast is not going to be Taylor Whitman. It will be something else. And I don't know what that is yet, but I'm looking forward to doing it. And as always, if you have questions, please submit your questions to Dennis at dennisfenrich.com. And I will get back to you on those or answer them on the podcast. That's what I meant to say. All right, guys, have a great week. And we will talk with you soon. All right, bye.